clerk, some quorum no stop, and we will suspend this parliament until Milukim quorum, then we will come back for the session for today. Honorable House, we've got the quorum this morning. But me ask him now, Member for Abao, Honorable Mara, to lead us in a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Sovereign Triune God, we want to thank you for our lives this morning. We thank you for your presence with us this morning. Father, you are omnipresent. You are omniscient. You know each and every one of us members of this parliament. You know the reason why we have gathered again this morning, that is to deliberate on issues that are of importance to your people in this country. We pray for the guidance of your Holy Spirit, Sovereign God, that it will lead us this morning in our deliberations. Father, we offer this prayer to you in the name of Jesus, your Son, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come. Your
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory,
forever and
ever. Amen. Honorable House, today morning I want to say thank you. Me like to thank you, long Mara Peroso government, as we celebrate our 50 years in the next couple of months. Me to thank you that Parliament of Papua New Guinea, as it celebrates its 50 years, and me look sabe lo mipla or Mary, and for the first time there is a woman sitting on the chair of the Parliament. So me to thank you. Me to thank you. Me to thank you. Me to thank you. Clerk, any petitions? No petitions? Notices, Clerk.
The Minister for Defence gives notice that he shall present a bill for an Act A, to establish the Fire and Rescue Service, and B, to provide for the functions, powers, and operations of the Fire and Rescue Service, and C, to implement Section 188 of the Constitution, the establishment of the state services insofar as an Act of Parliament is required to make a provision for or in respect of other state services, and D, to repeal and replace the Fire Service Act, Chapter 6.4, and for related matters. The Minister for Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an Act to amend the Local Level Government Administration Act 1997 and for related purposes. The member for National Capital District gives notice that he shall present a bill for an Act to make provision for powers enabling the courts to issue exclusion orders to any person found guilty of any offense committed in an urban area in any part of the country, and enabling police to bring persons before the court to be dealt with under this Act.
Honorable members, question time is now open. Thank you. Member for Bogia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Assistant Speaker, on behalf of the people of Bogia and on behalf of our party, I would like to congratulate you this morning as the first female Speaker of the Parliament of Papua New Guinea. Congratulations to you and the people of North Bougainville. I rise to ask this question without notice to the Minister for Trade and International Minister for International Trade and Investments. My apologies. This is in regard to the PMIZ project in Madang. It's been 15 years now, and the people of Madang have been waiting for this project to get off the ground. Quite a substantial amount of money spent on this huge investment in the country, and there's nothing seems to be moving forward. The people of Madang are losing out on jobs, taxes, revenue, and this has been going on for years now, 15 years, Madam Speaker, Assistant Speaker. I would like to ask the following questions to the Minister responsible. Number one, what is the latest in the PMIJ program or project in Madang in its development? What is the proposed, or in the proposed joint venture with Arituna? When is this cannery is going to be under construction? And what is the delay? And thirdly, what will be the equity proposed for the Madang Provincial Government, the Subka District, and the Madang DDAs? Madang District DDAs. Thank you very much, Madam Assistant Speaker.
Minister for International Trade.
I thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I too want to, on behalf of my people of Yangon South, congratulate you for making history today, to being the first female to be Deputy Speaker of Parliament and occupying this very important seat. I want to thank the member for Bougainville for asking a very timely and very important question. It is a fact that this project has dragged on for 15 years. Let me through. Since Prime Minister delegated the responsibility to me to be responsible for the development of PMIZ, I have looked at how can we get it off the ground as best as we can. We have some constraints that this Parliament needs to understand, our people need to understand. Firstly, to develop PMIZ, you need a wharf for the fish catchers to be landed at the PMIZ. We don't have a wharf. You need water. We don't have sufficient water supply for 10 canneries. You need power. We don't even have that. So we have some serious constraints in trying to develop PMIZ. So, Deputy Speaker, when I assessed it with my department, the easiest way to develop PMIZ and to bring it online as soon as possible is to go into bed with or do a joint venture with RD, because they already have a wharf next to the state land, NFA land at PMIZ. They already have cold storage. Those are two important factors. So we've been negotiating through the state negotiating team a joint venture agreement with PMIZ, with RD, so we can build a cannery, because they already have the wharf, they have a slipway, and they have cold storage, which are necessary in order to have a cannery. I'm happy to report to this Parliament, the only thing that's stopping us from the NEC to make that final decision is the legal clearance now from the state solicitor. Should he give the legal clearance today or tomorrow, I will be taking back a submission to Cabinet for them to approve the memorandum of agreement between the state, Madang Provincial Government, RD, for us to enter into a joint venture, for the state to put 50% of the equity required, which is 80 million, which is now ready, and we should be on our way with PM plan to commence or launch the first cannery within the PMIZ area by next month. So I am confident the Marape government by next month will deliver PMIZ that we have all been waiting for 15 solid years. I'm happy to report to Parliament we are on track, and I'm just waiting for the state solicitor to give his final clearance. I'm sure I will have the support of NEC and we will get it underway. It will be a very historic achievement for any government which is independent, because for the first time we will have a PNG-owned cannery in the fishery sector. Never has that been ever done, where we will own half. We have provisions in the agreement for aspects like within 5 years all the key jobs in the cannery must be localized and occupied by Papua New Guineans. Those are some of the terms that we are going to be proposing to NEC, and I think Hadi has basically agreed to that. In terms of your question on equity, it is my proposal, which I'll be taking to Cabinet, and it's up to Cabinet, but I will be proposing that the Madang provincial government must be given 10% equity in this project. And Sumkar and Madang districts, 5% each. And they should be free carried and paid for by the government. That will be my proposal to Cabinet that I want to inform the people of Madang and Parliament this morning. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Sina Yangumo, you were the first one to stand before I called on Naguri. Member.
Thank you for your recognition, Assistant Speaker. I also extend my congratulations on your appointment. I only wish very soon they make you substantive speaker too, not just assistant. Then we make a real point, and it will be an achievement for us in this parliament. In September last year, Assistant Speaker, I asked the Attorney General 11 questions, and he said, give it to me in writing, and then I will answer. So I did that already. I gave it to him in writing several times. I was expecting him to answer in November sitting, but he didn't come. He was somewhere else. But now he's here, and I can see him over there. So perhaps he can answer those questions now, and we get to the bottom of it. And depending on his answer, I'll have some supplementary too. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you. Me too. I mean, like, congratulate you, Assistant Speaker. From Bougainville, someone sitting on that chair. It's a respect for people of Bougainville, as well as ladies in Papua New Guinea. And congratulations. As to you, my colleague's question is, I will answer. It's ready, except that I didn't bring those, and I will answer it tomorrow.
You got that? Member Polio. Yes? Member?
Thank you. Member Cannabis.
You're not going to bail out on me, thank you.
As a speaker, last minute, you can call me member for anywhere. It's okay.
Member for Kandep. I'm just saying that. Member for Kandep, please.
Thank you. My indulgence. Thank you. I don't want to water down the commendations from my colleagues to your being there in the chair. I commend you. And the first time you entered, I was telling my colleague beside me, Junior Erman Tobining, that my goodness, he's got authority. And you have. Good. My question to the Minister for Treasury, and probably other relevant ministers could take note. It's on the implementation of the budget 2024. I did mention slightly to him before I asked his questions, but very simple. Question number one of the 4 questions, did Treasury or the Internal Revenue Commission meet the projected targets of revenue for 2024? I think the projected target for the budget appropriation for 2024 was around 27 billion or something. Was that target met? If it was not met, probably the Treasurer, the Minister of Treasury could as to why it was not met. Question number 2, if the target revenue was met by Treasury or through IRC and collecting the proceeds into the consolidated revenue, were the funds sent to all implementing agents to implement the budget appropriation as per 2024, allocations to the various implementers like provincial governments, departments, etc. If the total or the full amount of money budgeted in the appropriations were not allocated or sent to the implementing agents, then I ask if the minister could highlight why did all those institutions did not receive the 100% revenue into their implementation systems as per the appropriation. And finally, if there were some failures in terms of the implementation, like revenues collected was on target, but indeed to other unforeseen circumstances or other challenges, and therefore provincial governments never received their full allocations, so departments did not receive, then are there any remedial actions put in place by the Treasury team to rectify the situation in this year's 2024 budget implementation? Thank you very much, Assistant Speaker.
Thank you. Minister for Treasury? Point of order. What's your point of order?
A point of order, Pastor. Point of order, all these questions are relating to the budget final outcome, which under the law will be presented after the 31st of March. So I think it's like preempting that report. So meeting, and you will make the ruling, Assistant Speaker. Meeting, Treasurer should not be asked to preempt this presentation.
Yeah.
After the 31st of March. Think tim lo mita so.
Thank you, Governor. I think by me asking the Minister for Treasury, if you can reply to that question.
Thank you, Madam Acting Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Kandep for his 4 questions. I'll try my very best to try and respond to you accurately. Your first question, did IRC meet their targeted revenue projections for 2024? I can say that they just about did, and with some very large revenue assumptions that we placed on them for 2024, they did pretty well. Some numbers to share with the Parliament and the people of Papua New Guinea. In the 2024 budget, IRC were projected to collect 16,158 million kina. The 2024 outcome, not the final budget outcome. The numbers still need to be finalized. So if I can provide that disclaimer today, IRC collected 16,094 million kina, a shortfall of 64 million kina from the 16,000 million they were tasked to collect. So a pretty good outcome, I'm sure most of us would agree. With customs, we had projected their budget revenue collection to be 2,537 million kina. They were able to collect 2,482 million, a shortfall of 55 million kina. So all up, tax revenues, one of the 2 revenue components in our annual budget. We budgeted 18,695. We collected 18,576, so a shortfall of 119 million kina. So tax component of revenues did very well. It was the non-tax component that let us down. And I think you asked that question as well. But let me go straight to your second question, and maybe I'll try and touch on the non-tax. I think it was number 3 or 4. So your then question was, if they did meet their projected revenue targets, as I'm affirming here today, why didn't various government departments or provincial governments receive their funds for 2024? Great question, and the answer is pretty clear. And as I mentioned earlier, we have two revenue collections, tax and non-tax. Tax did well. Let me now cover with the Parliament the non-tax component, and that's the answer to why some of our departments and provincial governments didn't receive their funds last year, but the good news is you'll receive it this year, as we had informed the government caucus this morning, and I think you were absent, so all of these were probably answered this morning. So for non-tax, if we received all of our tax collections, why didn't government departments and provincial governments receive it? Well, the answer is your non-tax component. That's made up of our Non-Tax Revenue Act. They're the collections that we sweep from our various state-owned agencies. We budgeted $1,248 for the NTRA group of departments and agencies. We collected 408, a shortfall of 840 million kina. 840 million kina. Dividends from our SOE, we budgeted 1,150 million kina. We collected 642 million, a shortfall of 508. We had some, minor statutory fees, departmental fees. We budgeted 96 million, collected 149, so up by 53. All up for non-tax. Here's your aggregate numbers. 2,494 million, our non-tax, which is what we had budgeted or projected to receive. We collected 1,198, a shortfall of 1,295 million kina. So when you look at it overall now, revenues, which we had projected, excluding grants, was 21,189 million kina. We collected 19,774, and therefore, with last year's budget, our revenues were down 1,414 million kina. So that was the main reasons why we were slow to meet some of the commitments for our various government departments and provincial governments. But the good news is, as we closed our accounts for this year, which was very, very challenging, we were able to close those accounts. We were able to close those accounts in a way that was in line with our 13-year plan, and most importantly, we were able to close those accounts without exceeding our deficit target, which if we did, we would have sacrificed a total of 2,700 million kina in our financing plan for this year. So that's the answer to your second question. Your fourth question, third and fourth, I think I answered your third question.
Yeah.
I believe I answered your third question. Your fourth one's, if there were any shortfalls in revenue, are there any plans to pay those departments, provincial governments and PIPs and all those commitments for this year? We certainly do have a plan, a very detailed implementation plan where Treasury, working with the Department of Finance, have set out a number of priorities to pay out for this year, and I can report back to the Parliament based on our budget, our Budget Management Committee meeting, number 141 on Tuesday. From the total outstanding expenditures from 2024, which summed up to 3.6 or 3,608 million kina. To date, of those outstanding from last year, we've paid out 1,825 million kina. That's from the last week in December the 27th onwards until the 31st. Accounts were closed until the 7th, from the 8th of January onwards. Till now, till last Tuesday, we've paid out that amount, the breakup of which is 704 million in checks paid out to date, and in cash transfers or EFT, electronic fund transfers, 1,120 million kina. That now leaves us a total of 1,783 million kina to pay out from last year, and we're targeting to pay out all of those outstandings by May of this year. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Member for North Fly.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Thank you, Lolok Saulong. People blow not fly. Na me too. Join him or colleague. Na misawa sem or mama blow not fly by mama sulugi siralos chair. Thank you. Congratulations. Ask him lo me dolong Prime Minister. Lo side blow. All couple of ministers. Me approach him all of plenty time. Long sambla wari blow district work. Na samla beki mix him longan in no satisfactory. Where meeting or me must ask him boss blow. Lo ask him lo me. He got almost about 4 or 5 ministries or ministers. Me approach him. Lo behind him commitment long all. Now over the time, I only ask him, only respond. We are running on air. Me plan no had money. As why I'm more same. I approached one time a minister for livestock and commit him. Provincial government, district lobby, lo walking walk cow, lo look at the cow. This minister continues to respond. He's got no money. Department belongan, ministry belongan, no had money forever, almost since 18 months office blind. Another minister, oil pump to one kind. Tourism minister to one kind. I'm committing 300,000. Law, me bla go celebrate him Selkambang show. Me follow up for almost about how many months. This minister texts to me, he says, I'm running on air. There's no money. Another minister, he commits and approves on the eve of the election. District Blomi want the Middle Fly district. I'm approving 5 million kina rice project. I'm all latest. I'm Minister of National Planning. I'm approving 5 million kina. Me wait to go no had some money come. The question I have here to the Prime Minister: why are these ministries functioning without money? Time I'm appointing more, allocating more, making work the country. Is this the indication of some country not got money? Now his government is mismanaging this country. Well, department belong are held reliable, answering people of this country. Now the question: how comes people are borrowing plenty money inside the government belong? This problem is happening. Can he be answerable for his departments? Not two people blow country blow display. Country you make. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Mr. Prime Minister.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Pass them through me. Join him all. One work blue Yumila House. Only make him commendation long using on Lucia. I think in our nation's history, this is the first time a woman leader has taken the chair to facilitate proceedings of Parliament. So on behalf of my own family, matters of my own electorate, matters of our country, and people of our country, including the autonomous region of Bougainville, let me say a huge congratulations. You come to the chair with a wealth of experience in your own right. You were previously Speaker of the Bougainville Parliament, and so it is not new to you. You fit in very well, and I want to commend you for your continued leadership and service to our country in various capacities, and in this morning having to sit on this chair. I want to appreciate the question that has been asked by member for Northfly. I want to put it to the country through this question, that government, whilst we have budgeted for, sometimes funding is delayed, sometimes funding is remitted lesser than what was forecasted in budget. The Treasurer will relay to us to the final budget outcome later in this year, a transparent report. And our government's transaction is evident in the final budget outcomes that Treasury does deliver every year. The final budget outcome, Madam Speaker, you look, me talk outside, you may spending money in the previous year. And I want to dispel the assertion that we are not credible, we are not trustworthy in respect to us honoring our commitments to departments, to districts, and to provinces. Our work program, and especially for our government now, after we closed the medium-term development plan 3, and now starting to operate the medium-term development 4, is sequenced not only in 1 year, but in multiple years that program must run. And so we're not focused on just the next election, Madam Assistant Speaker. Our conversation, our focus must be in multiple years for a program to mature into sustaining dividend or yield for our economy. For instance, the livestock sector, or oil palm sector, or the coffee sector that we've now detached from the overall umbrella of our agriculture ministry into separate ministries on their own. These are targeted creations to reduce a dependency on import, for instance, in food crop, and also target for export earnings. Oil palm, a big export earner for our country, has emerged as the #1 export earner in the agricultural sector, and oil palm within our region. By the way, we become the 4th member of the oil palm producing nation with Indonesia, with Malaysia very recently. So it's a targeted approach to grow this sector. Government funding alone is small in respect to these sectors getting to be worked upon. We allocate funding to facilitate the office and to assist partners to have investment in this sector. Our key partner is districts where land and people are that can participate in this sector. Every district, for instance, has a 10% allocation from their Service Improvement Fund for economic sector. If you're waiting for a 300,000 kina from the Ministry of Tourism, of course you can wait and we could give, but your own 300,000 kina must be upfront, deposited, working that space, and we can offer complementary assistance. Everyone runs to Treasury with the assumption that Treasury has an endless pool of fund. Madam Assistant Speaker, last year, Treasurer was transparent by alluding to a question raised by a member for Kandep that we did not collect 1.4 billion kina because of underperformance, especially in the non-tax revenue sector and our state dividends to state from our key state-owned enterprises. So if we are underperforming in 1.4 billion kina, you expect equivalent reduction in expenditure so that we stick to the main focus of government, and that is to maintain a responsible number in as far as the macroeconomic number is concerned. And so sometimes other sectors get delayed funding or lesser funding. Now, it is an unfair assessment to Treasury and central government if we had not given fully or at least given some money to those sectors. All sectors have been allocated some fund. I give you one statistic just to, in the interest of time, to indicate. For instance, the livestock development sector. We may not have given fully what was budgeted last year, but we have given something. 5 million kina, for instance, to livestock last year. Now, you tell me, what can 5 million do? Madam, I beg your pardon, Madam Assistant Speaker, 5 million kina is not sufficient. I'm the first to admit it's not sufficient to fix the entire resuscitation of the livestock sector in our country. You asked me the second question, then why do you put some money into the sector? That is for us to drive the policy aspect of the sector, so that your district's concerned, your province is concerned, and the private sector can get behind making the sector work. To fully resuscitate, including livestock in not fly, the need for capital is humongous, huge. You need over 1 billion kina, 2 billion kina to make the livestock sector work. Please assist me listening.
Member Northfly, what's your point of order?
My point of order is in relation to the 5 million. The 5 million appropriation the Prime Minister refers. According to the Minister, he says the 5 million went to hire cars, just to be on the board. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Madam Assistant Speaker, I don't intend to get into the debate on what was spent on that money, but I'm using a case in point when the assessment, the Treasury released no money to the sectors concerned. Speaking a debate with his colleague, member for Western Provincial Assembly, I can understand this. But money does go to sectors, and the assessment of the national government doesn't give money to sectors. National government is running broke, is far from the truth. We give money according to what we collect. Budgets are forecasted. What we collect, to the best ability, we disburse. And all districts have received money, for instance, including the opposition. Never once has he uttered thankfulness to the money that this government has continued giving him. Never once. And it's time for budget. Time for budget. He never sits to support passing budget, but time to ask him, and they walk out of the budget.
Northfly, what's your point of order again?
Assistant Speaker, can you ask the Prime Minister to withdraw that I don't sit here to support the budget? That's wrong. I've been sitting constantly on every budget session to approve and support. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister?
I'll revisit my notes on the handset on those who attended, but if he did sit in last year's budget, I want to sincerely appreciate. We've rendered to his district a full 10 million DSIP for last year. And I want to appreciate Treasurer for working hard, Finance Minister, Planning Minister, and under my instruction, opposition or government should not be victimized. All must receive. All must receive what is the district's fund because it belongs to our people. And so last year's fund have gone to all districts alike, including my favorite, one of my favorite districts, Yalu Pangia. All have received. All have received. And so we ask all members of parliament, and the question has a very important element to it. He asked on livestock, he asked on oil palm. These are key focus areas. All members are encouraged. Using your DSIP, identify land that is available, work that space. National government doesn't have all the full fund to make those sectors work, but together with all members of parliament and all governors, based on a clear plan, we could attract private sector to come and invest in these key sectors with the Kina for Kina or a support. And I speak on Kina for Kina. If all members target national government focus areas, then you stand ready to support Kina for Kina. Kina for Kina is held to assist districts who are working, or provinces who are working consistent with MDDP 4, especially our core national government focus areas in investing in the economic sector. I certainly look forward to the member for North Fly to keep on working with the districts concerned. Well, if some funding is delayed, some funding will come still, but that is not enough and adequate to meet all our needs. You work the planning, together we can attract private sector to come into these areas of concern that can assist the economy in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for your supplementary, please go ahead. Supplementary.
Madam Assistant Speaker, I join leaders of this Honourable House to congratulate you on taking up the chair. It's a progressive move for women in the country. My supplementary, Assistant Speaker, is to the good Prime Minister. The honourable question by the honourable member for North Fly was how were the departments funded? Last year, notwithstanding revenue shortfalls with respect to non-tax revenue performance, this government, the Marape government, borrowed 3.983, almost 4 billion kina in borrowings. That took the total borrowing of the Marape government to 37 billion kina since 2019, increasing our national debt to 62 billion kina. These are massive, whopping amounts of debt and borrowing. So what happened to this 4 billion kina that was borrowed, and why weren't these commitments by ministers honoured for the member for North Fly and his district? Thank you, Acting Speaker.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Assistant Speaker, a very good question, supplementary question rather, from the learned Deputy Opposition Leader. If we all understand budgeting, the 3.9 billion, as he said it, is part of the overall financing framework for 2024. This government is very disciplined. Our focus in fiscal consolidation remains. Fiscal consolidation, me like make him talk pisin because all man very long stop outside to all need lo harem display. Because plenty time you may make him talk English, some of the time fancy too much. Now all man very lo place only no kiss him talk pisin good. Fiscal consolidation, I mean him also last 5 years, maybe the focus lo bring him back budget limit come back long surplus or balanced budget by 2027. And so time people like him government, people he go first thing focus at first, and our key focus was restructure of our economy and the fiscal position people are inheriting. In 2018 or 2019 rather, as we took office, our finances were very, very weak. When you look at the actual numbers may give you a 62 billion kina figure in terms of debt. But percentage is the key. Percentage to economy. Percentage to the size of the economy. The debt that we took, the actual kina may sound big. 3 billion kina, 2 billion kina, 4 billion kina. But when you stack it up against the size of the economy, we are still reducing back. Debt to GDP globally is above 80%. Most economies have a debt to GDP above 80%. Our country's debt to GDP has now fallen below 50% for the first time in the last 6 years, if I could put it this way. Now, why 6 years? I'm not comparing the O'Neill government's time in office. That belongs to that era. When we took office in 2019, the finances were even bad. We had to restructure the economy. And to restructure the economy takes some time. You have to borrow cheaply to pay off expensive, heavy debts of the past. That was something we had to do also. And so once we were restructuring the economy, the once in 100 years COVID-19 hit us. Globally speaking, Madam Deputy Speaker, Assistant Speaker, you look, all economies, all countries went on borrowing. You look in our region, average debt to GDP above 80% still. You will ask me, I'm replying this in a long way, Madam Assistant Speaker. The comeback question block in. Let me ask him, how comes you borrowed 3.9 billion kina last year now? Money belong last year stuff where? Now 3.9 billion kina borrowed last year came within last year's money plan, all within all within the deficit, rather the deficit envelope we had in last year's budget. Treasurer, what is last year's deficit? Last year's deficit plan wasn't even beyond 3%. We were within our deficit plan of 2024. Money mix him last year, and we go fill him in this gap. Otherwise, but you don't have to him full 10 million kina DSRP last year, including Suave. No, it's a case in point, reference point to government being equal and distributing equal right across. If we plan on raising this plan, a major part of our money plan would be slashed back. That was raised almost 100% as Treasury focused. And so, me like give my assurance, people of the country, last year's borrowing was not reckless. It was within our last year's money plan. Stick to this government to see whether by 2027 we come back to a surplus or not. The last time this country saw a surplus budget was when I was education minister. When I was education minister, that's 2010. The last time this country saw a surplus budget. The Honorable Pukatemu was deputy prime minister, and he was in government. It was surplus that time. Since then, we've been running deficit budget up till today. To turn a big economy back to clear water will take some reconstruct in the economy. We borrow cheaply to refinance expensive debt. We're maintaining a fiscal consolidation path to come back to responsible balanced budget by 27. Treasury's got a clear roadmap that by 2034, whoever is in government will be operating a country that has no debt inside. And Mila giving big belly silo line man Merilo place. This government's given more assistance to the economy. Who had removed tax from the small people, those who were earning under 20,000 kina a year? No one has done this since 1975. Logat man rasim takis logat a lik man meriblim. The last time you been making, you been not take only government, apim come 12,500. Maybe apim go along 20,000 today. Small people don't pay tax anymore. In the middle of tough times, we got to get this revenue someplace to make sure we maintain budget support until we hit back a balanced budget in 2027. So we'll give assurance logar man Mary. This la money opposition leader or deputy opposition leader I'm talking. I think you should be opposition leader now meeting us. I'm talk here. I mean no nupla money. I'm stop last year budget. This year mula down in Dina come down. Next year mula down in Dina go down more. Until 27, but we come back, the budget we're not got Dina in our money plan. So it is within our 5-year fiscal path that Treasury has established. We didn't borrow any new money. The delayed response for 2024 money plan. Apart from that 1.4 billion kina where you mean raising through non-tax revenue, may like also talk also January 10th, where Rascoli hit him Port Moresby City. Now disaster he come up long rain, tight water long plenty up country last year, as well as landslip long Mulitaka, and also had almost 1 billion kina take to the budget last year. So these are ways where we are affecting budget. Now, please appreciating what we are doing. I'm sure when you hear, you would not do something much different from what we are doing. You'll be doing exactly the same, if not worse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. We have a supplementary. Member, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, supplementary here.
Talk law budget.
There is a supplementary. Point of order. Well.
Later, when you give me the opportunity, but with due respect, the Speaker is supposed to be impartial. Go around, not just the opposition. Not the opposition. Thank you.
We have a supplementary. We have a supplementary over here. No, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm being fair. Honorable House, I'm being fair. I'm not going one way. I'm going both ways.
Now.
You know? Supplementary, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm the fairest.
Thank
Go ahead.
By me fighting claim, but me establish parliament. So supplementary blow me ikamlo government side. Generally speaking, every time we talk about cost of operations for government himself, take the easy approach of going and borrowing, and meanwhile that stockpile blow me gone up yet, which is a matter of legitimate concern. But in all that period of debate, Minusari Montpla man talk law cutting cost of operations for government. It come down so that you may live within our means and we don't have to go out and borrow. So I must play budget speech miarim, plan law ministers miarim, no got man talk law cutting cost of operation. Suppose you run your private business, by you looking cost cutting pastime. We've never done that. So I think, Prime Minister, while you're answering all these other questions, you might also enlighten us. Wouldn't it be wise to also look at cost cutting as a means of saving ourselves on these skyrocketing debt burdens that we are creating by, which to me sounds to be the easy way out. But it takes somebody with guts to be able to stand up and say, look, let's cut the cost to the overall operation of the government so we don't have to go out and borrow and keep building up our debt stockpile.
Thank you.
So I think it's probably part of this series of discussions, lo Prime Minister, lo give me sambla tintin blame. Emiga tintin lo cutting cost of operations. Should we go down that pathway or should we just ignore it?
Members
and continue borrowing?
Asking Prime Minister or back him
Yeah,
now, ask him, please. Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister.
We don't need to advise Prime Minister.
This
is not a supplement. This is not a supplementary. This is advising Prime Minister.
Let me remind this House, I'm chairing this session. I decide who goes. So me asking Prime Minister, long please back him, supplementary come, long sina yangumu. Mr. Prime Minister, please. Mr. Prime Minister?
Madam Assistant Speaker, thank you, Law. Ask him or kiss him supplementary, Law. Colleague, Law Yimi Long, upside member, Law Sina. Me like moving on the motion past time long. You may extend him question time by 20 minutes. So that some leaders will decide to the bearing that yesterday and the other day we were busy paying respect to Sir Julius or late Sir Julius. So if I could move that we adjourn question time by 20 minutes.
Yes. You may have him finish, Prime Minister. I ask him, the floor, that we extend question time by another 20 minutes. Those in favor, say aye. No? Please stand. Absolute majority, members of Parliament. Let's extend question time by another 20 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister?
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Me like also ask him clerk. Lo you black the front lo table of front lo advise him or line sit down lo siap lo speaker that supplementary provisions lo question must not be abused. No black question and no black question. Advise him or line but sit down lo siya or some. Or like ask him question where me no black question must no black question. I think you may all put out beyond law procedure and standard law Parliament. Plenty to hide backside law supplementary and ask him no question. Can I say member of law senior ask him good plan no question. Good plan no question. Member, so me like you start in this plus space, me no need to lecture him you, but being leader of government business for so long, I think these are things that we could tidy up. But come back law question where member of law. Sina he ask him. This block question, a good block question. Me like ask him, put him in writing. But Salim me come, na ba me like back and back good. But me like give him assurance lo one block indication lo type of budget where government will be running. For the first time, I am the 8th Prime Minister. There are 7 Prime Ministers before me, all rotating in between. This is the first government that has elevated development budget almost on par with recurrent. Before he come, recurrent budgets are stopped under more than 60-70%. Now development budgets are stopped below 30%. Today, as we speak, in 2025, population living approaching 10 million. Population before underneath long 10 million. A million one need long country. The recurrent element of budget supports everyday running of departments, including our provinces, including our districts. And so there must be a balanced debate. Cutting back recurrent in one block, but there must be also matching cutting back development too, so similar cutting. But we are at a point in time in the nation's history, our 460,840 square kilometers of land, very big land mass, from swamps, from deltas, to mountains, to valleys, to islands, it needed money long support, needed departments long work. So you have a debate between cutting back, belting tighten your belt, and not supporting out in our sectors, or try to be extravagant and try to support the sectors. We on this side choose, in the last 6 years when we had, that we will borrow responsibly, have a growth budget, and try to get the money out to the economy. And we, as government, has supported the economy the last 6 years. We choose to go down this path. But to give assurance when he places that recurrent seems to consume a lot, I want to point, for instance, recurrent money, paying policeman, paying TISA, paying health workman, and recurrent here. And for the first time, I said I will answer the question in writing. Me like reply good lemno, you make clear. Recurrent display, PIP display. You got need cutting back legislation. I agree with the Principal Holly. Some unnecessary areas need to be cut. And yesterday we saw responsibility. Instead of creating Nubla department, a Larem department of petroleum staff, we made redundant petroleum department, subsume all into one structure now. Instead of before, you create an MRA, now you Larem mining department staff. We're moving that step. Very soon, we're going to fold in mining department. This is what you meant. I appreciate the gist of the question, but I want to impress to all of us. In the long run, for the first time, we've now elevated almost PIP budget on par with recurrent. Before, used to be recurrent at 70%, PIP at 30%. We've now brought them almost on par. But the idea that we must cut unnecessary waste is a good idea, Mr. Member for Sina, through you, Madam Assistant Speaker. I will get back a formal written statement, if not an answer to the question, a statement to the Parliament on the status quo at present. Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable members, I have to inform the Parliament that village leaders from Ward 7 and 8, from Mabudawan village in South Fly electorate, Darul Western Province, are in the house. They're in the gallery today. Also, a youth group from the Seventh-day Adventist Church at Erima. They're also present here today. So on behalf of the National Parliament of Papua New Guinea, we extend a big welcome. Thank you, Tomas. I will now ask Member for Karamui Nomane.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Congratulations are in order from the people of Karamui Nomane on your appointment as the first female Assistant Speaker to sit on the chair. I have two short questions. It is directed to the good Minister for Provincial Affairs. And I would also ask the Minister for Administrative Services to take note. My questions pertain to the deferred local level government elections slated for next month across the country. Can the good minister confirm to this House and the people of this country if the election will proceed, the LLG election will proceed as published in the media? And the second question is, if the election were to proceed, what is your department's position and perhaps by extension the government's position on the election of local level government presidents? Will the presidents be elected by the people along with the ward council members at the election, or the ward councillors, the elected ward councillors will convene subsequently and elect the presidents? Madam Assistant Speaker, I raised this question because the government National Census Program rolled out last year. As far as I know, some of the provinces have not completed our census. So it raises the issue of whether or not the election will proceed.
Point of order. What's your point, Minister?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I get the opportunity, I'll thank you. But For now, I just want to correct the good member for Karamu Numane that the census was concluded on the 16th of December last year. Thank you.
Member.
Madam Assistant Speaker, I thank the Minister for Provincial Affairs. So I beg your pardon, the Administrative Services for that information. Maybe at a time when he presented the report to this floor, I think he could make that information known. But as this states, there are some parts of Papua New Guinea that they think that the census have not been completed, some provinces. So that is why I'm raising the question. At the outset, when I asked the question, I asked the good Minister for Administrative Services to take note.
I'm asking Bloyupinis?
Yes, Madam Assistant Speaker, these are my two questions directed to the good Minister for Provincial Affairs and for my good, for the good Minister for Administrative Services to also take note. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister for Provincial Affairs?
Thank you. First of all, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate you, Madam Assistant Speaker, on behalf of my family as well as my electorate, and of course on behalf of all the mothers and daughters of this country. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam Assistant Speaker, this is a very important question, and I'm pleased that member for Karamu Normale has asked. I think most of our people are waiting. Plantiman Boyumilo, country worker wait to stop. So I need to clear this matter. But first of all, I think we have already gone out in the press in the last few days. The Prime Minister has done that. And I will also be doing that to clarify and give assurance to our people of Papua New Guinea that the questions that Honorable Member has raised are to be answered. The first question is whether or not LLG election is to be held. Yes, answer Muslim, yes. As we have agreed end of last year, LLG election was set for April 24th, writs are to be issued, and then July 25th, the writs are to be returned. So that date still remains. Last year, Cabinet made a decision to defer to April because of the other project that was going on, and that was the national census. We have also looked at April because of the fact that first few months of the year, funds are to be given or given to addressing education and health issues and, of course, important issue of law and order. So my assurance to Papua New Guinea is that, yes, the election is proceeding as we have planned. So please take note wherever you are. The election is on. There has been a question because of, or concerns been raised because of funding issues. I can give assurance to our people of Papua New Guinea and this House that we have established funds up to 180 million kina to conduct LRG election. Though time is short, the time is perhaps about 6 to 8 weeks. But having consulted my colleague minister and cabinet, we feel that we can still carry out the LRG election. Okay, number 2 issue is that whether or not, or what method of election do we apply for election of presidents. Madam Assistant Speaker, I think consistent with what the government has
presented last year, there are two methods. One is presidents to be elected by people, and second method is presidents to be elected by ward members. And consistent with that, decisions were made in the last end of last year, and that is those two methods. The provinces in the highlands, including Morobe province, have opted to elect the president by the present practices, which is ward members who elect their own presidents. Whereas rest of Papua New Guinea, particularly coastal provinces, will elect the president by the people. So I want to make it quite clear. Presidents to be elected by ward members will be basically in the highlands provinces, plus Morobe province. Presidents to be elected by the people will be mainly all the coastal provinces, so that we can elect good people. Today I'll be making amendments to local level administrative act. This is an important part of what I'm talking about, and that is electing good people, honorable people, people who are able to present the government at the rural level, at the community level, so that they can present the government and ensuring that services are provided. I think it is right for me to also mention that this government, our government, and this parliament has also put most of the ward members on salaries.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, but 300 kina per fortnight. But therefore, it kind of makes our leaders out in the communities vying for this very important seats on the ground. Let me mention that yes, it is true, but it comes with responsibilities. So today's amendment is also putting certain restrictions. If you're elected and you leave your village community and you come to Mosby or you go to Ley or Medain, in a given time, perhaps 1 month, if you're not performing in your village community, Minister for Provincial Affairs have the power to terminate you and call for a new election. There are restrictions as well. So, Madam Speaker, Assistant Speaker, I hope I have answered the question.
Yes,
Thank you.
Member for, Governor for Morobe.
Madam Assistant Speaker, let me on behalf of the people of Morobe unreservedly congratulate you. You are making a history for yourself, for your people, and for this nation. As the First Lady sitting on that odd chair of the Speaker of the National Parliament, I congratulate you. My question, Mr. Speaker, will be addressed to the Minister for Bougainville Affairs. Is he here or not here? All right, thank you, you are here. Honourable Minister, before I raise the two questions I consider important, let me put the circumstances in order. First of all, Mr. Assistant Speaker, the Bougainville peace agreement was signed in 2001 after a deal strike at Lincoln's City in New Zealand. This agreement was signed by the leaders of Papua New Guinea Parliament, representing this country, and representing Bougainville leaders at the time. And when that agreement was signed, that agreement was supposed to be built into the constitutional law. Part 14 of that constitutional law, Part 14, was the one which became that translation or the transplant of that peace agreement into constitutional law. In that constitutional law, it required that the Bougainville autonomous government was going to be set up by organic law, which occurred. Secondly, it also required that there was going to be a disposal of weapons. It occurred. It occurred. And that the autonomous government was going to be set up, and that autonomous government was going to be meeting the international standard of good governance. We're not being told, but I suppose that that standard has been met gradually. In that, Part 14 also provided, Mr. Speaker, Assistant Speaker, for the referendum to be conducted for the Bougainville to decide whether they wish to remain with the country Papua New Guinea or sever themselves to become a state. That was decided. That referendum was conducted, and the majority of the people in Bougainville decided that they want independence.
Governor, what's your question?
I'm coming to it, Lady Speaker. I'm coming to it very shortly, if you are patient. Mr. Assistant Speaker, and the consultation was supposed to take place. Consultation has taken place, in my view, Mr. Speaker. Now, for the Minister, you, with due respect to you and the government, was supposed to table that result pursuant to Section 342, subsection 2 of the Constitution. That thing hasn't taken place. To Parliament, for the Parliament's consideration, and whatever the outcome should be reported to the Bougainville government in according to that section. Now, Mr. Speaker, Assistant Speaker, I asked the Minister, it has taken 24 years from the time the peace agreement was signed. Can you just tell this Parliament what is the progress up until now? Number one. Number two, when will, if you're ready, able to report to this Parliament in accordance with Section 342, subsection 2, for determination by the honourable members of the Parliament? When are you going to table it? Number three, are you aware the front page of the Post-Courier today, front page of the Post-Courier today unreservedly states out by the duly elected leader of the Bougainville government, Ismail Toroma, Honourable Ismail Toroma, as the President of the autonomous government, and Honourable the Ezekiel Massad as Attorney General, and the leaders and the genuine leaders of the Bougainville has state the date to this country, the 1st of September 2027, as the date that that part of the province will declare as a state, as an independent state. They don't care whatever happens. That's a clear statement on Papua New Guinea government is going to delay it or making a decision or what the international community is going to decide. They are not, they're not concerned. They're not saying that's going to stop them. They're going to go ahead and declare independence on the 1st of September 2027. So as a nation, through this Parliament, we should know you cannot be suffering from indecision, with due respect, bringing this matter to this court, this Parliament.
Governor?
Thank you. With respect, Sir, Madam. Answer those two questions.
Governor, thank you. Thank you. Minister for Bougainville Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on behalf of my people and my women folk in my district for you occupying that prestigious chair. I'd like to thank the good governor for Morbe for asking a very important question in relation to the issue on Bougainville and the update that the Parliament need and the people need to be advised on what the progress is on the Bougainville peace process. The good governor has asked a very important question for the members of this House, as well as the people of this country and the people of Bougainville to be informed of. The good governor asked 3 specific questions. As far as the subject matter concerns, I'd like to answer those 3 questions in one hit. But I must say in the outset that I'll be giving a ministerial statement providing the update for the progress we are having. Probably it's going to happen next week if the Parliament adjourns next week. But for the purpose of the questions asked, let me update this House as to the updated progress that we have made. The good governor has briefly informed us as to the process on the Bougainville peace process. In brief, under the Bougainville Peace Agreement, we have 3 main processes. The first process, as the good governor has indicated, was to set up the autonomous Bougainville government, and that has happened. We have an autonomous Bougainville government, which has been in existence for almost 20 years. The second process was the weapons disposal, and that has taken place already. The third and the last process is the referendum. And the good governor has mentioned a particularly important point in relation to good governance. I believe good governance was one of the conditions for the referendum to take place. There has been issues in relation to that, but nonetheless, the referendum has actually taken place in 2019. And the Constitution and the Bougainville Peace Agreement, in particular Section 342, it requires for the minister responsible for Bougainville affairs to actually bring the referendum result to the National Parliament. Now, the people of question that the good governor has asked, the report has not come to the National Parliament. Our government has been in constant communication with the autonomous Bougainville government to have the consultations over the referendum result, which the Constitution and the Bougainville Peace Agreement very explicitly says that after the referendum is had, consultation must take place between the autonomous Bougainville government and the national government over the referendum result. Once the consultation is concluded, together with the consultation report and the referendum result must be brought to the National Parliament. Now, the point is the Constitution and the Peace Agreement, Madam Speaker, do not specify a time frame within which the consultation should be completed and brought forward. The same peace agreement, Bougainville Peace Agreement, and the Constitution does not also specify explicitly
the time frame within which the referendum results should be brought into Parliament. And one very important issue that arose in our consultation process was that there is no specific procedure in the Constitution, in particular part 14, which implements the Bougainville Peace Agreement, and also in the Bougainville Peace Agreement, the process or procedure by which this national parliament should approach or follow in deliberating and deciding on the Bougainville referendum result to make a final decision as to the future political settlement for Bougainville. Now, the ABG and the national government, we have had a number of joint supervisory body meetings in our consultations to try to come up with a procedure to advise the national parliament to adopt before the referendum result is actually tabled here for Parliament and the members of the Honorable House to debate over it and make a final decision. Now, that procedure was to be introduced by way of a sessional order, and both parties have basically agreed to almost the form as well as the content, but one particular issue that stood out that we are at the moment grappling with is the required majority the Parliament should have to actually decide on the substantive Bougainville referendum result. Madam Speaker, the national government's position was that the Parliament should decide on the referendum result by 2/3 absolute majority. Now, autonomous Bougainville government's position was that it should take a simple majority vote. That has been the main sticking point. And so in accordance with the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Constitution, because we had this particular issue, we have invoked a dispute resolution mechanism provided in the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Constitution. We have invoked, I think, Section 334 of the National Constitution, which provides about the implementation of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, and in particular, Clause 265 of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, basically invoking the dispute resolution mechanism provided in the Bougainville Peace Agreement to resolve this issue that we have at the moment. And following that, on the, Madam Speaker, on the 8th of May last year, joint supervisory body meeting was held to address that particular issue. And in that JSB meeting, parties have resolved to engage an international mediator or a moderator, the service of an international mediator or moderator to assist us in resolving that particular issue. And I must inform the Parliament and the people that on the 10th of September last year, our good Prime Minister and the President of ABG have engaged a world-renowned moderator or a mediator from New Zealand. His name is Jerry Mataparai. He's a former Governor General for New Zealand and the ex-commander for the New Zealand Defense Force. So the international mediator was engaged, and terms of reference for the mediator to come and assist us to resolve this particular issue. However, we have also expanded the terms of reference for the mediator to not just stick to this particular technical issue, but also to consider us to resolve on a possible political settlement that the government can propose to the Parliament for Parliament to decide. And I must inform the Parliament that the moderator has been in the country for the past few months. I must also inform that the mediator has traveled to Bougainville himself to actually have a preliminary consultation with the people, as well as the leaders. I must inform that the mediator will be here in the country next week to actually have the first consultations meeting with the parties to try to resolve the issue. Myself plus my counterpart in the autonomous Bougainville government will actually be making a presentation to the mediator next week on the 17th. Now, the point that I want the members of the Parliament to understand is that once the mediator concludes its hearings and makes the findings about the issues we have, the report will be presented back to the Joint Supervisory Body meeting and the national government, as well as the autonomous Bougainville government. Together with the result of the mediator and the consultation result, I will then prepare a final report over that consultations and present the referendum result together with the consultation report. So, Madam Speaker, the reason why the referendum result has not been brought quickly in Parliament is simply because the consultation is still in progress. And as soon as, or as and when the international mediator completes its report and findings, they'll be presented to Parliament together with the referendum result. And we are hoping that the international mediator will complete its report before end of July this year. Coming back to the third question the good governor has posed regarding a media report on the alleged position taken by the ABG leadership, I must inform the House that I am not aware of that. We have not been formally informed of that particular report. What we have done is, I must inform the House and the people that we are progressing well within the precincts, within the confines of the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Constitution. Anything that happens outside of it is considered as illegal and would be contrary to the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Constitution. But having said that, Madam Speaker, I will provide a full, detailed update next week if the Parliament adjourns then. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable members, time for questions without notice is expired. I'll call on Leader of Government Business.
Madam Assistant Speaker, before I move my motion, I'd also like to take this opportunity long giving big look to you, Mama Blumpelo Bougainville, na government Blayumi, this honorable house, long got confidence, long you kisim this last year. One time this me congratulating you, na me look forward, long you, long guiding me plol man lo house. But you me can got hat, long all mama, long scale him tok, long look save, long walk Blayumi 1-1, long lead him country Blayumi. With that, Madam Assistant Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Is leave granted? Leave of government business.
Madam Assistant Speaker, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent notice number 127 and 128, government business, being called on forthwith.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clerk.
Notice number 127, Prime Minister.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, Madam Assistant Speaker, rather, I present the Prime Minister a National Council Amendment Bill 2025.
Clerk.
First reading, a bill for an act to amend the Prime Minister and National Executive Council Act 2002 and for related purposes.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move the second reading forthwith, please.
Is leave granted? Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I move that the bill now be read a second time.
The question is that the question be now put. Prime Minister, make your speech.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me on the outset thank yourself again for being on the chair today, making history, but also more importantly, thank both sides of the House for constructive and intelligent debates to various bills introduced by my government since we took office as the government in May of 2019. And in the last Parliament to present Parliament, or present day, the support to bills have been worthy from both sides of the House. I do understand sometimes the divide that in between different policy perspectives, but nonetheless, I do want to thank both sides of the House, from government and the opposition, that continues to meet in terms of areas of common ground to support good bills. Today I seek the leave of Parliament to present to this Honourable House the National Executive Council Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, as I continually say, my government is not a new government. When I took office as Prime Minister in 2019, together with the then Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable David Stephen, we pledged to restore a robust relationship with our department and agency heads. This was necessary in order to make all of us accountable to the advancement of our agenda to improve services and service delivery to our people by aligning plans to resources. On 28th of June 2019, a list of priorities that aim to articulate our broad priorities and indicators taken from our Luluata resolutions was issued to all ministers as part of our strategic plan to guide us towards achievement of the same goals. These priorities were categorized under the following sectors: the economic sector, state enterprise sector, social sector, law and order, and administrative services. Madam Speaker, the heads of departments and agencies in these respective sectors were requested to develop practical, manageable, and achievable implementation plans and to progress them accordingly. My department, the Department of Prime Minister and National Executive Council, which was included under the administrative sector, was of no exception. It has been 6 years since these interventions were initiated by my government. Madam Speaker, today I am pleased to inform this Honourable House of the achievement of the ones that directly relate to my role as the head of the government and as the chairman of the National Executive Council. These were: restore effectively whole-of-government coordination, promote best practice for policy implementation, review and update NEC procedures and legislative requirements, and digitalize NEC processes. Madam Speaker, to achieve the above, it was important that a clear demarcation of roles and responsibilities were established between my department, the Department of Prime Minister, and the National Executive Council. At this juncture, may I inform the House that the Department of Prime Minister and National Executive Council structurally has 3 department heads. We have the Secretary of the Department, who is also the Chief Secretary to Government. We have the Secretary to the National Executive Council, and we have the First Legislative Council. These 3 have specific responsibilities mandated by the Prime Minister and National Executive Council Act of 2002 and the Legislative Drafting Services Act, each reporting directly to the Prime Minister. However, unlike the Secretary of the Department and the First Legislative Council, whose positions are established by an Act of Parliament, which is the Prime Minister and NEC Act, and the Legislative Drafting Services Act, respectively, the position of the Secretary of the National Executive Council is established by the Constitution, especially Section 150 of our Constitution. Therefore, this makes it distinct from the Department of Prime Minister and National Executive Council. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, through decision number 242 of 2020, the National Executive Council agreed for the office of the Secretary to the National Executive Council to be removed from the Prime Minister's Department and the National Executive Council and established as a stand-alone department. This decision was again echoed by the NEC through decision number 2 of 2022. Madam Speaker, Madam Assistant Speaker, as a department head, the Secretary to the National Executive Council has clear key result areas contained in a 4-year employment contract with the state. The above decisions were to ensure that the Secretary has direct control over resources to deliver these key result areas to the expectations of the Prime Minister, the National Executive Council, and of course the government and our people. Madam Speaker, following from these decisions, administratively through a restructuring process, a combined effort by the Prime Minister's Department and the National Executive Council, Department of Personnel Management, the Secretary of the National Executive Council, and of course with technical assistance from the Australian High Commission, the Australian Department of Prime Minister and the Cabinet to see whether it was in order. A new office called the Office of National Executive Council was set up. The office was formally established by the Head of State on the 22nd of February 2024 as a deemed Department of the Public Service, and the Secretary of the National Executive Council as its department head pursuant to Public Service Management Act 1995. Madam Speaker, now that the office is established, the National Executive Council Bill 2025 is introduced to give effect and implement Section 149, subsection 5, and Section 150 of our Constitution. Madam Speaker, Section 149, subsection 5 of our Constitution provides for the National Executive Council to determine its own procedures. I raise that the intent of Section 145, subsection 5 of the Constitution was never properly implemented by successive governments. Today, there is no existence of an organic law or a specific act of parliament that provides for the procedures of NEC. Instead, the NEC has relied on handbook to provide for its own procedures. Madam Speaker, the dilemma with the handbook was that it was not regularly updated over the years to reflect changes to policy and legislations, and as well as the operating environment that we operate in today, over 10 million people, and the needs that is compounded. And this has impacted NEC procedures at various points in time and from time to time. The main reason for this was that there was no department or officer allocated with specific responsibilities to update the handbook and keep the NEC and all stakeholders informed on the process and to ensure compliance where appropriate, especially the compliance aspect. It was assumed that the Department of Prime Minister and National Executive Council is responsible. However, the lack of implementation of various NEC directives on this matter over the years shows that the department has not delivered and cannot deliver to specific functions of the Secretary of the Department and the Secretary of NEC as contained in PM and NEC Act. In the absence of an updated handbook, the NEC and its members relied on institutional memory for advice on best practice as well as associate and relevant legal precedents. Madam Speaker, over time, the quality of submissions brought to NEC for consideration and the standards involved with handling, dissemination, and reporting of its decisions have eroded. In our attempts to strengthen the NEC process, we amended the Prime Minister and National Executive Council Act 2002 in 2020, where a new section 23A, was inserted to deal with the procedures and the decisions of NEC. However, despite these efforts, implementation was still an issue based on reasons given above, especially a dedicated office to coordinate for implementation of NEC decisions. Madam Speaker, in addition to the amendment of PM and NEC Act, the handbook was recently updated in 2022. The 2022 version saw major changes to the formats of the NEC submissions and the processes of bringing submissions to NEC. Headings under the new submission formats have been reorganized to ensure submissions contained key and relevant information on the proposal to assist NEC making informed decisions from well-presented papers. It is now a requirement that submission must address the following: reference to sponsoring ministers' key result areas, identify issues associated with the proposal, provide an analysis on the success or failure of the proposal, followed by risk assessment, whether immediate, medium, or long-term, and propose options for the government to note, including preferred course of action for consideration by NEC. Strong emphasis was also placed on the need for wider consultations to be held during the submission at the development phase at the department and ministerial committee levels, and accountability through regular reporting on the implementation of NEC decisions. Madam Speaker, the National Executive Council Bill 2025 strengthens the process of bringing submissions to the Council by giving legal effect to the NEC handbook and its implementation. Madam Speaker, in addition to this, the National Executive Council 2025 also addresses the recurring issues of unauthorized disclosure or access to NEC decisions. Oftentimes, this causes stress and anxiety among members of the Council, the government, and the public at large. It could be perceived as a matter of national security when confidential National Executive Council decisions and national interest matters are disclosed to the public or those who are not meant to receive it. This bill defines this as an offence that carries a fine of 50,000 kina or imprisonment up to 5-year terms. Provisions of this, Madam Speaker, provisions of timely reports to NEC and Parliament is another ongoing issue in the government and the public service. Almost all the government departments and agencies do not submit annual reports on time, or sometimes not at all. This includes provincial governments, by the way, and of course Bougainville, by the way. And Bougainville is not a provincial government, so they have a different relation, but Section 338 of our Constitution requires that they do practice good governance. This is despite the fact that it is a mandatory requirement for reports to be submitted. In fact, the Constitution at Section 141, subsection B, states that the ministry is a collective responsibility answerable to the people through the Parliament. As the executive, we are compliant with reports when reports are presented to the Parliament on all things we have done. We note that various legislations provide for submissions of these reports by 31st March each year and acknowledge a few listed below. The Prime Minister and NEC Act 2002 in Section 22, the Public Service Management Act 1995 in Section 32, and lastly but not the least, the Public Finance Management Act 1995 in the new Section 47L requires that 31st of March each year all annual reports must come in. In addition to annual reports, the NEC procedure also requires ministries and departments to submit reports on the implementation of NEC decisions that they have implemented to NEC. Madam Speaker, the National Executive Council 2025 is not to reinvent the wheel, but it is to compel departments and agencies to provide these mandatory reports. 2 consecutive years of non-submission reports while in office will constitute grounds for dismissal under the employment contract. I repeat, 2 consecutive years of non-submission of annual performance reports, whether it's Section 22 from PM and NEC or Section 32 from Public Service Management Act report or Section 47L from the Public Finance Management report. 2 consecutive failure to report. And I look at you, Governor Eastern Highlands, including provincial administrators. When they don't submit report, then it is ground for termination of the employment contract. 50 years on, complacency and corruption continues to creep into our system. Simple aspect of reporting must be done by department heads. And the place where reports are found eventually ends up in Parliament for ministers to report. So this law then compels and gives authority to the Secretary of the Department of NEC to be able to collate all who are reporting or not reporting on reports. Madam Speaker, we have oversight over departments and agencies that report to us, and therefore we acknowledge that annual reports are consolidation of reports from respective divisions, branches, and units within the department and agency. In that regard, the Secretary of Department of Personnel Management and the State Solicitor have been directed to ensure that all public service employment contracts, even at the Deputy Secretary level and below, must contain provisions in the responsibility as government officers to submit reports and to safeguard official matters entrusted to them in the course of the work. Penalties for non-compliance will include non-renewal of contracts. Madam Speaker, the NEC is the principal decision-making body and in some cases the highest decision-making body in the country. It deals with matters that oftentimes are confidential and sensitive in nature. Its submissions and decisions and informations must therefore be handled by authorized senior government officers. It is now a requirement of all government departments and agencies reporting directly to a minister to have in place an NEC liaisons officer at the Deputy Secretary level. It is hoped that with the appointment of the liaisons officers, the NEC procedures will become embedded in the public service machinery over time. Madam Speaker, as alluded to earlier, Section 150 of our Constitution enables or establishes rather the Office of the Secretary of the National Executive Council and provides for the NEC to determine the function of the Secretary through an Act of Parliament. The Prime Minister National Executive Council Act 2002 in Section 23 provides for the functions and the powers of the Secretary to the National Executive Council. However, as the Office of the Secretary to the National Executive Council is a creature of the Constitution like the Council itself, it must now operate under its own Act as intended by Section 150, subsection 2 of our Constitution. Madam Speaker, the National Executive Council Bill 2025 implements Section 150 of the Constitution by providing for the functions and powers of the Secretary to the National Executive Council. The Secretary has the following functions, amongst others: manage and coordinate all affairs of NEC, assist the Prime Minister in formulating, monitoring, and reporting on the Minister's key result areas, receive all NEC submissions and ensure their compliance with the NEC procedures, assist in the coordination and implementation of NEC decisions and NEC's liaison with Parliament and Office of the Governor-General. It is important to note that these functions are already performed by the Secretary. The bill merely affirms them and gives recognition to the purpose of the Office of NEC, which is to assist the Secretary in the performance of these functions. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, it is the firm view of the Marape Rosso government that by capturing the NEC procedures together with the functions and powers of the NEC Secretary in an Act of Parliament, this will eventually lead to whole-of-government coordination, best practice policy implementation, and achieving the interventions we made when we took office in 2019. Reform and restructure is what we thought we must do, and 50 years on, seeing the hindsight of our system that carries us, we must construct a government structure that is fit for purpose to carry our country beyond 50 years of nationhood. Madam Speaker, with this, I commend the bill to this Honourable House.
The question be put? Oh, you got that. The question is not be put. The question be put. Sorry. Member for Abao.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to you. I think for the first time, because you are there, the House is balanced.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your appointment as Assistant Speaker. We are very, very proud of that attainment. I want to make a few comments on the presentation by the Honorable Prime Minister on this very, very important bill, particularly in moving the National Executive Council head, the Secretary for Cabinet, as a separate entity by itself, as a department. Yesterday, I did allude to the comments, and I've been going through the details of the bill. And Prime Minister, I think you are right. Your government has made the right decision to relook at the procedures of cabinet submissions, because over the years, we have not complied with the procedures that are very clearly outlined in the handbook. And so I congratulate the government on this important decision. I just want to point out two matters. In my reading of the bill since yesterday, I failed to see the role of the Central Agency Coordination Committee in the process, because in Section 7 of the proposed bill, subsection 7, it says that the Secretary shall issue clearance to any submission lodged with the office before its presentation to Cabinet. So we are now, by this law, giving powers to the Cabinet Secretary to vet the policy submission that the Ministers of State want the Cabinet to make decisions on. And so now we are congregating power to a not elected, a public servant. And so because in the process, rather than give power to one person, we established a Central Agency Coordination Committee, CACC, where all the central agency heads would sit together and make sure that the cabinet papers are in order, particularly, for example, for those that had implications on funding, that the treasurer must be consulted, whether that submission is coming from other sectors of, in the country. The key agencies must be consulted. That was the job of the Central Agency Coordination Committee. So Secretary for Treasury, Secretary for Finance, Secretary for Planning, Secretary for Attorney General, and Secretary for Provincial Affairs are members of the CACC. I can't see it here. And so my question, Prime Minister, through the Assistant Speaker is, are we now getting rid of the Central Agency Coordination Committee? And I raise a concern. I hope it's not. I hope it's still there. Okay, the second issue is, and I have echoed some of these sentiments, and I want to re-echo it while the Prime Minister is now bringing an amendment to the PMNEC Act. Now we'll only call it Prime Minister's Act and NEC Act when we pass it. And that is, I am of the strong opinion that our Constitution and the organic laws and the enabling legislation have given one person, one citizen in this country, the most powerful citizen, and that is the Prime Minister of the country. My personal opinion. And so, Assistant Speaker, in subsection 7, on the process of bringing submissions to the NEC, I wish there is provision in that process that all submissions, whether it's by the Minister of State, the Deputy Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister, must follow this law now that we are going to pass. If, for example, the Prime Minister just brings a submission overnight and tries to bring it to Cabinet without following the law, and this is why I'm supporting this bill, then that submission should be rejected. It should go back to the drawing board. That makes the Ministers of State equally powerful. I remember being one of the agency ministers and Prime Minister brings a submission to Cabinet without me being aware of it. That must stop, and I was looking for something in this bill to be equal to everybody, that Prime Minister and Ministers of State should be given the same authority and opportunity to bring submissions fully processed so that the Executive Council can approve it, including those that are brought by the Prime Minister of the land. Because we know how powerful the Prime Minister is in our country. He has the power to do anything. Appoint ministers, sack ministers, bring submissions, chairman of NEC, therefore he got power to, you say yes. Even when we disagree, the hammer goes down, NEC approved. I've seen it in over the years, 7 ministers, and I know those who were ministers with me in those many governments, they agree with me. And so I think there is an opportunity in this 50th year of independence, but we must now look at the power of this one citizen called the Prime Minister. You cannot usurp the power of the Prime Minister's office to undermine a Minister of State. It's immoral, it's unethical, and it's no good. And so this law, I strongly recommend that every NEC paper that comes to Cabinet must have that scrutiny. And now it's by law. It was just procedure, handbook Tasolia, and I'm glad it's now law. I hope that that law can be enforced. And I'm sure, I know that no law is perfect, but I stand to support it, and I stand to see it rolled out and administered, and where there are faults, we can improve it and bring it back to the Honorable House. Thank you, Assistant Speaker.
Thank you, Member Bao. Thank you. Question be put? Question is that. Question be put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is now the bill be read the second time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clerk.
Second reading. a bill for an act to amend the Prime Minister and National Executive Council Act 2002 and for related purposes.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I want to, before I ask the Parliament to move the third reading forward.
Is leave granted? Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg your pardon. Before I move that the bill be read a third time, I move that the bill be read a third time, brother. And I want to make some response to the pertinent issues raised by the member for Abao. And I appreciate his commentary, being in various cabinets since 2002. He can understand exactly where this is coming from. I want to give assurance to this House that the role of CACC remains and is entrenched in the Prime Minister and NEC Act. So this in no way, shape and form dilutes the role of CACC, and all process remains. The Section 7 power of this new Act allows for the Secretary of Department of NEC to make sure that all the ticks are ticked off. All the ticks are ticked off, including the issues where sometimes cabinet paper could be rushed through that are not of any sense of agency. Just like the member for Abao, him and me were privileged to serve the two previous governments as cabinet ministers. I have served two previous prime ministers before I became prime minister myself, and I'm pretty conversant with sometimes possible abuse of the processes. This one now gives opportunity that the processes are not abused. That a cabinet process is fixed in law. If you have a proposal, you have a paper, it goes right through the path. And then it holds accountability in the system. That those who expect to deliver on the outcomes must be delivering on the outcomes. So I want to give comfort to all members of the Parliament and to the country. As part of our amendments and reconstruct to 50 years of being as a country, this is some work. Though small it may seem, but essentially important to tidy, so that no one Prime Minister sees he's a superhuman being and sits in the office of Prime Minister doing what he has to do. Gone are the days where papers can be pushed right through. And so this intends to achieve the outcome the member for Abao has alluded to. And the rest of the process, including the role of CACC to make sure financial implications, legal implications, etc., is secured in the other sister law that exists, or the current law that exists as it is today, whilst we create this sister law. I want to also give assurance to our people of this country, not to say that the past has been bad. There are processes involved in NEC process, including CACC. But before CACC deals with these papers, you got ministerial committees. For instance, the Ministerial Economic Committee or the Social Sector Committee that deliberates on papers before it comes up. In terms of passing laws, the laws that government sponsor, laws does not emerge overnight. All get a law, mibla passim, or one come to Parliament, and we get process. Example, state solicitor by giving one will call him number one lawyer from country, I'll call him state solicitor, and by giving him certificate of compliance. Before that, certificate of necessity must start finished. Now, before come FLC, by giving talk right or something okay. So he got about 4+ steps involved, all got a paper come NEC. Now what we are doing, putting Okra into law so that one block man or some prime minister or one block minister, working something or like blocking, beyond him law, long over the cabinet process, because final decision by that impact the country, you must be in law and work him. And after this one, passing finish, who said you supposed to make him work. If you look him to law, him go down. Hold him secretary, that's all accountable. Plenty time government like Senis, secretary too stop under pressure. Because deputy secretary, I'm start making all kind of funny underneath the deputy secretary. I've been around long time enough to understand that the rank and file of the public service too are not at work when political tensions are hot in the air. So we're trying to hold the entire rank and file accountable. Public service making work straight. South's paper is no good. You got every chance along the chain of process, law advice him was a paper no good. I mean, like taking this lot of time, law advice him on public servant. But submission come where you feel no stuff in law. You have every right, law document him this in writing. You know, talk minister talk making, I mean making or government to make him what. Work play no advice. This like direction here, I mean no stop law. You know advise him now you come back now to awesome, I mean what people or something. This one now once and for all entrances. The entire process of cabinet, giving respect to the vitality of democracy that we have, which means power belongs to the people. The entire chain of process must involve everyone correctly and not one man dominate up at the top. Will I give assurance to country too also for the first time? Under my watch, we've instructed for secret ballot in NEC. Secret ballot. So all you vote to like play you. No God man need to say how you vote. Look, every decision, cabinet like working. Highest authority law country, law sit down law cabinet making this law. I challenge to all the governors. Do you conduct your assembly well? Do you allow decisions to be made very well by in a transparent manner like this? Something we must all do. You know, one man decide. The entire body of leaders, ministers must decide at the provincial assembly or provincial PC. Ministers at the National Executive Council must decide, not the Prime Minister. We've given respect to the entire process where everyone decides in the chain of decision-making along a country's way. And at the Cabinet, we're elevating it to the highest. So, Madam Speaker, sorry, me talk Mr. yet. Madam Speaker, me commenting was this bill, we come to House, let me pass it.
The question be put. The question is that the question be put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that the bill now be read the third time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clerk.
Third reading. A bill for an act to amend the Prime Minister and National Executive Council Act 2002 and for related purposes.
Clerk.
Notice number 128, Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I present the National Executive Council Bill 2025.
Clerk.
First reading. A bill for an act to A, implement Section 1495 of the Constitution to provide for the implementation of the decisions of the National Executive Council, and B, implement Section 150 of the Constitution in providing the functions and responsibilities of the Secretary to the National Executive Council and for related purposes.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, Madam Assistant Speaker, this amendment again, me pass one time, past time, law you set him. Now, look at that talk law, this series of amendments. Me come one time, past time talk. Thank you too much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, me now moving on some bill now, you may read him second time.
The question is that the question will be put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that the bill be now read the second time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clerk.
Second reading. The bill for an act to A, implement Section 1495 of the Constitution to provide for implementation of the decisions of the National Executive Council, and B, implement Section 150 of the Constitution in providing the functions and responsibilities of the Secretary to the National Executive Council and for related purposes.
Honorable members, I have to announce that I have received a message from His Excellency, the Governor General, dated 11th of March 2025, recommending the expenditure of public monies of Papua New Guinea in accordance with Section 210 of the Constitution insofar as the bill relates to and provides for such expenditure. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, may I ask him leave the Parliament or move him third reading, hurry up to mass.
Is leave granted? Clerk, Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, may move him that this bill now, you may read him number 3 times.
The question is now put that the bill be read. The question is not the question before. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those not liking this letter talk no God. The ayes have it. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be now read a third time. In accordance with the constitutional requirements, the bill must be passed by an absolute majority of 60 members. Clerk, please ring the bell. Close the doors. Close to. Attendants, close the doors. No get up him again. The question is that the bill now be read the third time. Would those in favor stand? With those against, please stand. No. Honorable House, ayes have 80, no is 0, nil. Clerk,
Third reading, a bill for an act to implement Section 1495 of the Constitution to provide for the implementation of the decisions of the National Executive Council, and B, implement Section 150 of the Constitution in providing the functions and responsibilities of the Secretary to the National Executive Council and for related purposes.
call upon the Honorable House, I will now call upon the Minister for Papers, Minister for International Trade and Investment. Your point of order, Member for Abao.
Assistant Speaker, I wish to raise a point of order on today is Thursday, and it's private members and private business day. The government has taken over a lot of time, and for quite a long time now, the bills or papers sitting on the notice paper are going to exceed the required time for them to be there before they are going to be automatically removed from the notice paper. So I request if the government, through the leader of government business, can allow those agendas on the paper today from the private, on agenda 7, be allowed to proceed before we rise today. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Abao. You may behind him program. Who will come to where you will talk to him. Again, I call upon the Minister. Minister for International Trade and Investment.
Pursuant to statute, I present the final report on the investigations into the East Nubian Resources Group, East Nubian Palm Oil Limited, Zen New Guinea Limited, and Zen Plantations Limited. I ask leave of the Parliament to make a statement in connection with the report.
Is leave granted? Ayes have it. Minister, make your speech.
Madam Speaker, I rise to present and update the Parliament on the final report of the investigations into the East Nubian Group, East Nubian Palm Oil Limited, Zen New Guinea Limited, and Zen Plantation Limited in relation to its dealings and business conduct towards the local oil palm growers of East Nubian Province. Madam Speaker, this is a very important investigation undertaken by the Marape government, and it's the first of its kind in the history of our country that a government is investigating the price of palm oil upon receiving complaints from over 15,000 village oil palm growers or farmers in East Nubian who have requested that the government must intervene to assist them seek a price increase of between 500 and 600% so that they can enjoy the same prices that farmers in West New Britain are enjoying and have been enjoying over many, many years. Because the price in East New Britain is very, very low compared to the prices that are being paid by New Britain palm oil and Hage oil palm in West New Britain province. Madam Speaker, this investigation was approved by the NEC in NEC decision number 192 of 2024. Following a petition that was received in August when NEC met in Rabaul by the local oil palm growers and landowners of Gazelle Peninsula and the wider Bay Area of East Nubian Province, calling for an investigation into the exploitation of an unfair trade practice by East Nubian Palm Oil Limited for allegedly fixing the price of oil palm to the farmers at a price of 10 kina per metric ton for over a period of 10 years from 2014 all the way to 2024, while at the same time the farmers in West New Britain are getting 800 kina per metric ton. That has gone on for 10 solid years. Madam Speaker, the NEC in its decision also approved the establishment of an investigating team, the terms of reference, the funding of $2 million, and I'm happy to report that the investigation was led by an independent oil palm expert who we brought in all the way from the UK, David Mehta, who was former CEO of Hage Oil Palm and New Britain Palm Oil, and a team of lawyers and other Papua New Guinea experts who helped them. And it took us 2 months to conduct the investigation. From November last year, November the 8th, all the way to the 16th of January, before this final report was put together. Madam Speaker, the investigation found that the East Nubian Palm Oil Limited is part of the East Nubian Resources Group, which comprised of East Nubian Palm Oil Limited and Zen New Guinea Limited and Zen Plantations Limited. And so the investigation team extended the investigation to cover the East Nubian Group and not just East Nubian Palm Oil Limited. The companies under the East New Britain Resources Group banner include East New Britain Palm Oil Limited and Zen New Guinea Limited and Zen Plantations Limited, and a related company, ONG New Guinea Limited, which serves as a special purpose vehicle for joint ventures. These companies are not interconnected through their ultimate shareholders, rather they have common directors. Madam Speaker, East New Britain Palm Oil Limited is part of East New Britain Resources Group and operates in the Gesell Peninsula area of East New Britain Province. It is recognized as a legitimate oil palm development with no prior history of logging activities. As of October 2024, East New Britain Palm Oil Limited manages approximately 7,996 hectares of leased land that is planted with oil palms. Additionally, it procures fresh fruit bunches from 36 smallholders who cultivate an extra 245 hectares. The company operates a palm oil mill with a capacity of 60, processing a capacity of 16 tons per hour, along with a kernel crushing plant. Madam Speaker, the East New Britain Palm Oil Limited palm oil development model is based on companies acquiring land from landowners through various arrangements, including but not limited to joint ventures, memorandum of understandings, and memorandum of agreements. Then developing and cultivating the oil palms on acquired land itself and paying landowners rentals and fresh fruit bunches, royalty payments obtained from that land or proposed profit shares in the case of joint ventures and where development costs are borne by the joint venture. The East New Britain Resources Group never planted oil palm for the smallholders. Madam Speaker, Zen New Guinea and Limited and Zen Plantation Limited, collectively referred to as Zen, are part of the East New Britain Resources Group operating in East New Britain. Originally, Zen New Guinea operated as a logging company. However, following a change in shareholders, Zen New Guinea was established, shifted the focus towards oil palm development. This oil palm development model was based on a SABL lease. After logging activities, the company developed some of the cleared areas for oil palm cultivation and subsequently manages these plantations. As of October 2024, Zen Plantation Limited had approximately 7,000 hectares planted oil palm with a palm oil mill capable of processing 45 tons per hour and a crushing and a kernel crushing plant. Madam Speaker, the East New Britain Resources Group was led by its former CEO, who holds full responsibility for the development of the East New Britain Resources Group's projects. During his tenure at Zen, he acquired the Special Agricultural Lease and subsequently the FCA. Following these acquisitions, he initiated the development of oil palm plantations on land owned by local landowners without formal agreements in place. Consequently, the landowners have no choice but to accept the terms imposed by him. At East New Britain Palm Oil Limited, he is an individual responsible for managing the initial acquisition of land from landowners for oil palm plantations. This process involved various agreements, some of which were merely verbal agreements. Madam Speaker, according to landowners, these arrangements were predominantly negotiated without adhering to proper free, prior, and informed consent protocols. No documented evidence of free, prior, and informed consent negotiations had been located by the investigation team, including verbal allegations suggest that he employed exploitation tactics, including verbal agreements, coercion, and intimidation to acquire land. Madam Speaker, it is alleged that the former CEO engaged in numerous inequitable benefit-sharing agreements that were agreed upon without prior, free prior and informed consent negotiations. Most landowners who signed this agreement did so without a clear understanding of their commitments, the benefits they would expect to receive, and the time frame in which these benefits would be delivered. Madam Speaker, it is the view of the investigating team that the former CEO is largely responsible for the issues related to oil palm development associated with the East Nubitan Resources Group in East Nubitan, as well as the significant issues to be addressed by the East Nubitan Resources Group and the losses suffered by associated landowner stakeholders. Madam Speaker, the investigating team was unable to obtain all the necessary information. However, the Chief Operating Officer of the East Nubitan Resources Group provided valuable assistance, as did representatives from the Investment Promotion Authority, the Independent Consumer and Competition Commission, and the Departments of Lands and Physical Planning. Due to limited information available, broad assumptions and calculations were made to estimate landowners and stakeholder losses. The investigating team estimated that the underpayments in terms of price to the landowners is estimated at 38,730 kina, 30,637 kina from the first oil palm plantings in 2009 to October 2024. What our people lost out in the 10 years by underpricing is over 38 million, estimated by the investigating team. In the absence of a mandatory price formula for our country, for FFBs for small outgrowers, and a standard template for benefit-sharing agreements with landowners, the losses suffered or underpayments to landowners were calculated based on the normal industry price or what Nubian palm oil was paying for fresh fruit bunch for small outgrowers and landowners, compared to what the East Nubian Resource Group was paying over a period of 10 years. Madam Speaker, it's important that the Parliament understands and this country understands we do not have a national price formula for oil palm. We don't. We've never had one in 50 years. So these loan companies are basically coming in and deciding on price and abusing our people. Many issues noted throughout this investigation include lack of mutually agreed benefit-sharing agreements, non-compliance with existing legislations, non-fulfillment of project agreements, etc., were mainly attributed to absence of a central regulatory body for the palm oil industry in Papua New Guinea. We don't have a national regulator like CIC or the Cocoa Board. Despite some existing legislation governing the operations of the oil palm companies, there is obviously lack of a proper central coordinating and oversight industry body or regulatory body. Madam Speaker, given the lack of oversight and governance of this existing legislation or regulatory framework applicable to PNG's oil palm industry, and a few missing areas with no legislation like a mandatory smallholder price formula, the state of PNG may not have the legal standing to undertake actions against the East Nubian Resources Group at this stage. We might not, because we don't have a law. The government of PNG needs to handle this situation with gracefulness to ensure a win-win situation for all stakeholders going forward. That is to keep the company operational, because it's got a mills, it's got a plantation, it needs to be exporting. But at the same time, we have to look at how we can, and so we have a fair and equitable benefit sharing agreement, including a national price formula. Madam Speaker, the recommendations that arose from the investigation include that we immediately as a country need to look at a new oil palm policy and legislation for the industry. This is to prevent logging companies from acquiring SABLs for logging purposes under the disguise of agricultural development. SABL is a bankable title and is suitable for acquiring and utilization of alienated lands for oil palm farming. Madam Speaker, the investigation also has recommended that we should quickly look at the issues affecting the oil palm growers of Guinea province. There are also complaints from other parts of the country coming now. And now farmers have actually stopped bringing the fruit to the mill. It's a very serious and important and serious issue, and that must be looked at immediately. Madam Speaker, another important recommendation is that the underpayments or losses suffered by landowners should be subject to independent valuation by reputable and certified business valuer who must have prior knowledge and experience in the oil palm industry, so that the landowners are compensated for the 38 million loss or estimated 38 million loss immediately. The recommendation from the investigation teams are option 1, that the state through the oil palm minister can direct a negotiation with the East Nubian provincial government for the losses to be paid to the farmers. Option 2, that these farmers be given shares in the company to the value of 38 million if they don't have the cash to pay. Option 3, the farmers take a class action against the company by going to court. Option 4, look at other options including taking them to court under the Companies Act. Option 6, criminal charges should be brought against the board and management of this company and its shareholders. Option 7, those responsible should be deported from this country to make a lesson for everybody else, not to exploit our people anymore. So those are some options which the investigating team has now proposed to government. The other recommendation is that the East Nubian Resources Group must pay penalties to the state for any non-compliance with existing legislation, including IRC, ICCC, and many other state agencies. Madam Speaker, the Marabe-Rosso government will act firmly on these complaints from our farmers and must act firmly so we can get a fair and far better package to encourage our people to free up land for oil palm development. We also want to send a clear message to all foreign investors that under the watch of the Marabe-Rosso government, no foreign investor will be allowed to cheat and rob our people from the fruit of their sweat and labor on our own land. Madam Speaker, this investigation will form the basis of the new oil palm policy and legislation that must be put together to govern the operations of the oil palm industry and its management into the future. Madam Speaker, we have a legislation that governs the coffee industry, one that governs the cocoa industry through the Cocoa Board. However, over the last 50 years, we have not had a legislation for the oil palm industry. We only have OPIC, which is an extension arm of the oil palm industry specifically for smallholders. We have never had a national price formula because we do not have a law that gives rise to a national price formula. If oil palm companies in the country do not pay the right prices to the farmers, who is the watchdog that watches over them? Who should they complain to? Do they have to wait for 10 years for the Marabe government to investigate? Right now there is no one. because successive governments have failed to formulate and provide legislation for the oil palm industry, unlike other industries. The gap in not having a regulatory framework around the oil palm industry has led to so much abuse and a robbing of our people. And I must say, including oil palm companies not paying the minimum wages. Madam Speaker, the oil palm industry in Papua New Guinea is the only subsector in agriculture that generates over $1 billion in export revenue every year. The latest figures, last year we sold over 2.1 billion. The nearest is coffee, 510 million kina. I mean, not reaching even billion. And yet no one has given focus to the oil palm industry in terms of regulation and law and policy. This makes oil palm industry the most important agriculture sector in our country. But yet we have not bothered to look after it through a legislative framework and a price formula mechanism so that our people will get good pricing and will be happy to make more land available for oil palm. Madam Speaker, Indonesia has over 13 million hectares of oil palm planted. The oil palm industry in Indonesia accounts for 1.6% of the GDP. As the majority of harvest is exported, the agriculture industry generates more than 18 billion US dollars to the Indonesian economy, and in fact is the biggest export industry in the whole of Indonesia. It is the only country in the world that has significantly increased the size of palm oil, which grew by almost 650% between 2000 and 2022. And contributing to the labor sector directly, 4 million employees and 16.2 million if you're talking indirect employees. Madam Speaker, the world demand for oil palm is very, very high and will continue to be very, very high because the world is moving to biofuel using oil palm. Like in Indonesia, 40% of all the oil palm is now used for biodiesel. So we see very high prices for the next 10 years. Madam Speaker, the biggest sleeping giant in the agriculture sector of Papua New Guinea is the oil palm industry. We have all this savanna land right across the country from the Sepik Plains, Morobe, Western, Oro, and we have not even planted oil palm in these savanna lands. We have to sort out the industry structure, regulations, price mechanism to attract the investors, give them special incentive through special economic zones, and plant up the savanna lands across the country with oil palm. Our country needs growth, development, revenue, and jobs. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Prime Minister and the government for agreeing with me that we needed to fully fund and undertake this investigation. And I also want to thank and place on record my sincere appreciation to the Governor of East New Britain, the Honorable Michael Marum and his provincial administration for their support and contribution to this very important investigation. Madam Speaker, this is not just an investigation that will be gathering dust in Waigani, like many other expensive investigations of the past. It is my hope, Madam Speaker, that this report, by presenting this report to Parliament, I will secure the support of both sides of the House to get behind the recommendations for a total overhaul of the palm oil industry, so a new policy and regulatory framework, including a national price formula, must be put in place this year. Timely action now. We waited 40 years, 50 years finished. Must be put in place by the Marape Rosso government to stop the exploitation of our farmers and our people. And such exploitation must never happen again. After 50 years of independence, we must be mature and we must put an end to foreign exploitation of our people in our own country and in our own land. Madam Speaker, we must also agree today that we will get behind the people of East New Britain and support them to recover 38 million they have lost. I mean, wrong blow. Government no got price formula, no got legislation, all suffer. Finally, Madam Speaker, my department and investigating team stands ready to support the Minister for Oil Palm and the Marape Rosso government to totally overhaul the oil palm industry with the introduction of a new policy regulatory framework, including a national price formula, to ensure that such exploitation must never happen again, and we must support the growth of the oil palm industry in Papua New Guinea, the biggest sleeping giant. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Government business.
Madam Assistant Speaker, pursuant to statute,
Sorry. Adjourn. Hang on.
pardon me, Assistant Speaker. Madam Assistant Speaker, I move that the report and its recommendations be adopted and the debate be adjourned and made in order of the day for a subsequent meeting.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of government business.
Madam Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Is leave granted? Ayes have it. Leader of government business.
Madam Chair, I move that leave of absence be granted to Mr. Connie Iguan, Deputy Speaker and Member for Makam, for the duration of this meeting due to medical review overseas. And Mr. Ekime Gorosau, Member for Daulo, for the duration of this meeting due to medical review overseas also.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of government business.
Madam Chair, I move that Parliament do now adjourn to 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Member for about. Yeah. Members of the House, the question is that Parliament will adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Members, I now adjourn Parliament until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Good luck, staff, good, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.